Great, thanks. So, as an entrepreneur or as an normal person, you have many ideas. An important part here is that how to validate if that idea is worth following. Uh, the first step, the most important step is in validating any idea would be to perform some interviews and then perform the observation. So why we perform interview is to check if that particular idea we are trying to validate has some link with other people too. If this has some link with the problem these people are following or there are other organizations and so on. And based on those interviews and observation, we can take next steps. Okay, before I go ahead, why am I qualified to even talk about interviews and observation in front of you guys? So, well, a little bit about me. I have done my education. I have like 2 bachelor, 1 master, 1 PhD, 2 postdoc, a bit of experience in being a patent attorney and IP consultant. Worked as an application developer for about 6 years. And about 3 years now, I'm doing business development, lean customer development. I have started like 4 startup, still continuing and see if it fails or success as a co-founder and founder. And most importantly, I'm working as a coach and a mentor. Of course, behind all this, I have many failed ideas. So my field of passion is entrepreneurship in sustainable development. I like to collaborate with motivated individuals and the team who are in the field of entrepreneurship and research. I like to do the social entrepreneurship and organization building, which I have done it here in Karlsruhe now, that I'm a co-founder of Maharashtra Mandar and also the Student Association. Well, I like to perform traditional martial art and visual art. I also like to give some tips here and there about the art of pitching. Of course, now as we are doing online, so it's difficult, but still it is important. And most importantly, I like to have learning about my failures and why to fail. That is important topic. Maybe we can take it next time. So you can approach me whenever you want about lean startup mindset, lean customer development, for example, business development, prototyping, applications in artificial intelligence, team building and team dynamics, and most importantly, what not to do, and or for any interesting topic you have for the discussion. So that's a bit of my background. Um, how I started my journey? Well, I started journey with there is basically, you can see there is nothing here. But when I started something, I always had a kind of very nice jump, and then I came down, and there was a lot of spiral. So this you can see this kind of journey is very common for anyone, and most importantly for any entrepreneur or anyone who wants to develop their career. So this is very common and not to get afraid of. But to make it more smooth and make it more organized, of course, this is the topic I would like to take it to you, that how can we get an information before even we start something? How can we make sure, how can we mitigate the risk basically to increase the success of anything we are planning to start? So that is what I also like to call it, dare to start. You can dare to start anything, but you can also do that with the calculated risk. And of course, you do not have to do it alone. You have to have a team for that. So in the next slide, we'll see that how important it is to get the information. Now, getting an information is a big topic. We all know that data is a new currency nowadays, and getting information is not that easy. Just take an example that when we are talking with someone, or as a person, as you take an as a person, you think something and you say something, and when you have some different feeling and you do different. So that's a big thing, right? How you don't get information on one-to-one. And the big question in front of us is that how to get that information out. So The question is like, well, it's a big question, how to get the information, how to start anything. I'm highly enthusiastic, highly motivated to start. I have dared now to start something, but well, there is some puzzle is missing. So why it is happening? What people say and do doesn't always match with what they think and feel, right? So there might be many reasons behind it. So the reason could be that they are not consciously aware of what they are feeling, for example, or they are socially biased, or they understand your question differently. So a, a deep understanding of your customer or the person you are interviewing is a prerequisite for for the acceptance of your product or services or your question to start with. Let's take an example. Let me ask you the question, like, do you do the sport for staying healthy? Now ask this question. I'm asking you this question to you, and you say like, hey,
Yes.
important point to note here. I am Please pay attention to the question. Do you do sports for staying healthy?
Yes.
So yes, you can answer in
Yes.
your heart, yes. So most of the interviewees will answer yes. This might be true actually, or they say yes because of a pro sport social standard. Or because they don't want to say they feel overweight, or they don't dare to say that they don't like to do sport, right? So this is again, we can go back. So this is might be that, you're not consciously aware of your niche, need and wish, or this is a socially biased question, or you are socially biased because you tend to go through the flow with the society and so on. Now, in the important part here, then, how can we even phrase our questions? How can we even perform our interviews and observation where we do not have such a, we can get, we avoid such a social biasness. We try to make people conscious about their needs and their what they are going through and so on. So this is the puzzling piece we are missing. And how to get that information? So the question we can ask as an entrepreneur or as an individual, is there a way to do that? And yes, there is, of course, a way to do that. Now, so there are like, I divide, we can divide that into 4 parts. So important part to get any information out of is you have to follow some structured way. For example, make an interview, observe that interview very well, walk in their shoes or walk in your interview shoes, and then interpret through data and intuition. So what are all these things? How, and then the next question could be, how can we even perform interviews? Are there standard ways? Are there best ways around? How can we observe that? How to really walk into their shoes? Means, what does it mean? And how to even interpret the data and how to use our intuition to get the information we need. So let's go one by one through now these 4 parts in next slides. So the important first part is like, let's perform interviews and not surveys. So I would ask first question, like, do you know the difference between interview and surveys? Is there a difference, you think? You can also write in chat like no or something if you want to. So of course there is a difference between interview and surveys. So surveys are, for example, we have set of questions where we are expecting the answer yes and no. However, in interview, we do not expect such a kind of answer. We expect more information. So this is the main difference between the interview and the surveys. So when we prepare an interview, there are certain guidelines we can follow. What do you want to find out? The important part is you need to know what is the important thing you would like to find out. What is your objective of that particular interview? Whom do you need to ask? This is also important question. You should not simply go everywhere and ask, start taking interviews, because the time is important, right? Yours and of course the next person. Where is a good place to meet your customer or users or interview in the situation you want to interview them about? And which question do you want to ask? So these are the some kind of a, guidelines you can follow. Uh, it is recommended that find a place where you can have face-to-face interviews. Now, due to this coronavirus and all these lockdowns, of course, face-to-face interviews are not possible, but you can still make use of very good use of the videos, for example, video interviews and so on, or online or offline, for example. But do not do surveys. And in interviews, use open-ended questions. Open-ended questions, for example, hey, tell me about your likings. Tell me about what you like and what you don't like. This is again bit of not open-ended question, but it's a little bit more down. So the another example of not open-ended question: do you like mango juice? This is like very targeted question. But if you ask this question, tell me about your liking about the fruit juice. This is again the focus question, but it's bit more open. So in interviews, of course, we can go for open-ended question, not closed question to start with. It's very, very important. And listen to people's story. It's very, very important. Do not interrupt them. Make sure that you listen them contently, because, and it's also the psychology of human that whenever we listen someone, we have our brain constantly thinking about it, and then we try to interrupt them. But try to hold that thoughts, write it down, and listen them. Important in this picture, you might have noticed that someone is taking an interview and what someone is observing it. So I highly recommend that you should always go with as a pair, because you as an interviewer, you always focused on asking question, thinking about what that person is saying, and then you are maybe improvising on in your questions. But the observer is important to note, but how is the face expression, how is the body language, what other things has been said by the interviewee. And what also we can see that whatever interviewer is missing can be captured by the observer. So always recommend that you always perform the interviews in a pair. It's very important to note. Since it is a direct interaction, can tweak your interview according to their answer. This is also important. Like you, of course, you prepare yourself, but do not stick to that thing, because every interview is different. They might be answering in a different way. So make sure that you have a set of questions which you can adjust or change it on the spot, so that you can get most out of your time and your interviews time. Okay, so this is important, that how we should perform the interviews. These are the guidelines, and these are of course the short introduction. Now let's go to the like how really exactly the interview is done. Like we do the interviews to perform to empathize with them. We want to make sure that our body language also matching with our interviewee, basically. There are of course this is another talk, of course, that how to even match, create a rapport between interviewee and interviewer, for example. So take an example. I always like to give this example of Bavarian breakfast, for example. You go and ask people around, like, hey, do you like what kind of breakfast you do? Do you do the breakfast in the morning? Of course, this is like targeted question, but then you can always say that, hey, okay, what kind of breakfast you do? Mostly people in Bavaria will say that, yes, I do Bavarian breakfast in the morning. And then, your goal is to see if you can sell the Indian spices to them. So you can add on top of that, hey, how about you like to add some Indian masala on top of that? Such kind of examples I can give it to you. So to perform the interviews, of course, we can go through such a structured way. always introduce and start framing. For example, hey, I'm Manoj Nimbalkar. I work for Technical University of Munich, and I'm here to we are working on a project, for example. So start with some introduction and framing. Start with some open-ended question again. So like I'm giving example, like I'm curious about. So you can directly copy paste this. I'm curious about, and then listen to that person. And then also you can say that, hey, tell me more about the last time you did this and that. Can you walk me through? So this three question itself allows you to empathize with your interview. So when you ask, tell me more, so you are already getting closer to your interviewee and saying that, okay, I'm interested in it, yes, I'm listening. And of course nod or look into their eyes, and do not look here and there. For example, make sure that you keep the eye contact. Your observer is doing all this thing because he's observing it. As an interview, you should make sure that you always looking into your interview's eyes, and you are gesturing them, like, saying that, yes, I'm intently listening to you, and so on. And when you ask them to, can you please walk me through your this what you are saying, then this also create, try to you get more deep dive, for example, their story of user story, for example. So this is very important to note. Now, these are the open-ended question. Of course, this rapport is increasing, as you can see is here, and then there is a peak, of course. And when then you can also ask, if you want to dig more deeper, like to get into the core of the problem, for example, then you can also ask, like, hey, tell me more. You can ask this question, like, tell me more, and so on. And then comes the important part, like, to know the core problem. So people do not give you information that easily. They are, as I said before in previous slide, they are either socially biased, or they are not even consciously, they are not even conscious about their problems or needs. So you need to get that information out by asking a right question. So this is also called the 5 whys. I will talk about that in next slides. So this is like 5 whys is used to go dig deeper into the problem, for example. So this is important to note. So always listen actively, always listening is like, mostly it is even said by some interview, like more the best coaches around the world, that even you do not speak anything during the interview, like even let's say, imagine in 10 minutes interview and you speak only 1 minute, that's the best interview you can have, because you get a lot of information out of it. So, and then what you can say, that when you have reached this point here, then you can say that, okay, so you want to repeat that, what your interview has said, like what, so tell me what I hear you saying is, repeat that. So just to make it consciously aware your interviewee that, okay, this is what you have said, is it true? This is like, it's what I'm listening, is it correct? And they might listen back. It's like looking into mirror, right? They might listen back and say, no. They might correct it, because you want to make sure that, you have this, you correct, you get more information out of it. Of course, you could have some joker question here, like what if there was, to find it out, put your solution. Of course, you do not want to sell anything for now. Do not sell anything now, but you can put a question if they are facing some problem. For example, this is about Bavarian breakfast. What if you have Indian spices uh, in this Bavarian breakfast? How do you find it? So this is kind of a joker question. And then at the end, you can always create a closure. For example, like anything else you would like to tell me about, or something like that. This is like closure, and listen to them, wait for a maybe minute, up to minute, because people always tend to think and they take some time. So always think about it, wait, give them enough time. And at the end, you can always finish it with thank you and so on. And importantly, to ask them if you could follow up with them, taking that, hey, thank you very much for your time, and we have got a lot of it was very nice that you spend your time, give the appreciation. And ask at the end that, can you follow up later on with him or her for further interviews, or can you also direct, can he or she direct you to someone else, and so on. So this is like, you can end at then. Okay. So in the next slide, so I will stop at when we have finished the interview section, and then I'll stop maybe for some small, if you have one or two questions. So let's go more on the 5 whys, like 5 whys, how it is really, what is the importance of this. So 5 whys basically is to dig deeper into the core of the problem. Let me ask you a question like, hey, why you do sport? And you say that, okay, I do sport because I like to have fun. I like to do sport. Yeah. So why you like to have fun? So you can always, yeah, I like to have fun. Why do you find it fun, for example? So you can say, I have fun because when I do the sport, I enjoy with being with friends or something. So why do you enjoy being with friends, for example? Then you say like, hey, because I get to know I have like I enjoy being with friends because I lose all the other related problems I have, and I just play my attention. I feel joy and so on, and more till you get really the core of the problem. And then you can also ask this question, maybe, okay, then you can come to the point where you see that that person is doing a sport not to stay healthy, but to get distress, for example, from his work or from his other problems he's facing, and he would like to be with friend because that staying with his friend allows him to distress. So 5 eyes question is to his goal is to go deeper and into the context you want to know about the problem you're tackling, or the solution you have, for example. Now, how to do the 5 why question, that I gave the example already, but then attach why to their answer, for example. It's very simple. And do the above round about 5 times. Again, the question could be asked like, why 5 times, until interview circles around the same kind of answer. So when you are getting the, even you don't have to 5 whys, you can reach that in 2 or 3 already, but 5 hours is generally is enough, and you do not want to do it more than 5s because people tend to get annoyed and get frustrated. You do not want to frustrate them. So when you gives the same kind of, when the interviewee gives the same kind of answer, then I think you have reached the core, you have reached the bottom. And then that is the deepest point you can have with your interview. Okay. So another tips and tricks for the interview: get in contact. The important is like get in contact with your customers. Of course, getting in contact with your customer is also very tricky because you do not directly get your customer on board. You maybe, I will ask, for example, Jagdish, do you know someone like this? And Jagdish will say, oh, okay, I don't know anyone, but I have this problem. Or maybe, yes, yeah, I know someone, but then I will give you this information, and so on. So getting to the customer is one of the difficult tasks to start with. Talk to right people. Always talk to right people. Do not waste your time, because getting their time, your time is important. And also the important is to be given to the person's time too. And mostly I would, when you get in contact, I would always tell them, hey, the interview will be for 30 to 45 minutes, and so on, so that he or she is already prepared that how long the interview would be. You can also well inform that about the topic you would like to interview about, and so on, so they can also prepare. But there are different types of interviews too. Maybe you can just go around the university or around your campus, on the road, for example. You can take these short interviews that could be maybe 5 minutes, but they should be very not targeted, but very important. You can simply introduce, like in the previous slide I said, like, hey, my name is Manoj, I'm working for Infineon, for example, and then I want to do this and that, and a very targeted question. 5 minutes on the road, not more than that. If someone is staying for more than 5 minutes, that's very, very welcome. So be creative. Always be creative and persistent. For example, if you are not getting any customer, then ask, can you refer me to someone? That referred person would also say that no, I really can't say anything. But then you also can say that, can you refer to me someone, and so on. So get on like this. So always be creative and persistent. So very important to get. Okay, and then you can conduct the interviews as in the previous, as by saying we are a student. When you are in team, of course we are a student. So one person always talking, and always make sure that who is talking all the time and who is observing. Of course, the observer can say that the interviewer has missed some point very quickly by hinting or something like that. So introduce yourself, introduce like we are doing, and that this is very, very important, because unless and until your interview doesn't know about you, they will not open up. And at the end of the end, you can always ask, as I said in the uh, for example, ask for contact details, ask for interesting people to talk, write down um, um, their useful voices or quotes, for example. This is important to know. People tend to give a quote a lot. So that is the customer voice. This is important to note. Okay, so this is about some tips and tricks. Before I go ahead, the next step, I would like to ask all of you if you have any question for now. Okay, so it seems that everyone seems to be very well understood. So let me go through the then second part of our interview and observations. That's the observe the people in their natural environment. Now, this is important because this allows us to decode the information by going into the journey of the people. Like, what is the natural environment we are talking about here? Like, is there something, how can you even do that? So before we even do the observation, always create an observation plan. Very important to do that. Very important to perform the, okay, someone wrote me, is there a message? I'm not able to see the message.
It's your WhatsApp, Manoj.
Okay. There was one thing in chat.
In chat, okay.
Okay for me. Okay. Yeah. So WhatsApp is closed, or maybe I have opened it. Sorry for that if it is. Okay. So always create a very well plan. Always do your homework. Good planning before you reach out to someone is very, very important, because the time, it might be your only opportunity to reach someone very important, to validate your plan or validate your problem or solution. And I will always say, suggest that when you create a plan, always go through it 3 times with your team or the observer who is going to be with you. So always discuss that in a team. So you can say that the important part is where to do that, when to do that, how to do that, what to ask, who to ask, and why to ask. Answer all these questions before you even reach out to someone. This is very, very important. Okay. Now, let's take an example of German Telecom, as we are in Germany, important part here. So what did Telecom wanted to observe? Because, this is the example of, they observe the mothers, for example, taking their wired telephone and going around in the house, basically, and their kids around with them. So they said, like, okay, then mother is always walking and kid is always there, and she's running behind the kid, and so on and so forth. So German Telecom decided, okay, we have to find a solution for that. So what did Telecom wanted to observe is that having a phone call, that is the important part. Having a phone call doesn't matter if it's only mother or some or father or someone else, but they wanted to observe having a phone call. Now, who did they observe? Of course, the adult at home. So this is important to note here. How did they observe? Like, how mother with 2 kids, little kids, for example, at home behaved when talking on the phone or when having a call with someone. When during the daytime, and when the childrens were around. This is important to note. So now, of course, when childrens are not around, mother is like relaxed, or the adult person or father, for example, is relaxed and is of course not going around the house, but is just sitting at sofa, for example, and talking with all the content or enjoyable moment he has. Now, where? At home. And why? Because why German Telecom wanted to do that? Because they wanted to develop something that that can help the customer in their environment, natural environment. So always ask these questions, like here the six question you have: what, who, how, when, where, and why. And then you can really find out who would be your right customer target, who would be your right interviewee to target to. So you also can then plan it accordingly, and then you can go ahead and talk to right people. uh, then you can save a lot of time, because running fast is the key for any startup to um, to get succeed in the future. Okay, this is all about observation. Now, next part. Before I go into next part, do you have any question for now, or should I go ahead?
Manoj, I have a question
Yes.
regarding the startups.
Yeah.
So when somebody's planning to do a startup, they already need to do this customer validation, right?
Yes. This is the first
Okay.
step you should follow. Yeah, that's true.
Mm, okay.
Without
Thanks.
following this, you cannot really make sure that if this is idea worth following. Are there buyer
Okay.
for that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh, this is a good question, because there are two types of ideas you could come. It's like one is through the market pool, and
Mm-hmm.
where you can comes through the science, for example, mostly from the technical advancement. When the
Mm-hmm.
technical advancement is happening, then you can, of course, this is a different thing, but there are different types. But when for both, this is important to conduct, because you want to develop that product to the next level. So yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Manoj.
Pleasure. Okay. Okay, so of course we'll have more time to discuss. So next part in this interview and observation would be, then experience the life like your customer or user or interview does. Walk into their shoes, like how they really do that. And how to do that. The question would be how to do that. This is the important part, the important third leg in decoding the information we would like to get out of it. So you can use the empathy map, basically, to walk into their shoes, find out more about the way your customer or user think or feel, for example, what they see, what they say and do, what they hear, and all these things in regards to the problem you want to understand, or the solution you would like to develop, for example. And important part here is to note that total immersion would be to live the life of your customer for a while. Of course, this is not possible all the time, but I would always recommend to do that when you are at the very early stage of your startup. So to live the life, talk to them, try to understand them, maybe visit them, maybe you can also ask them. Mostly this is not possible in many cases, but in corporate world it could be possible that you can say that, hey, I would like to visit you maybe for an hour or so on. And that is important, the location is important, that you visit the customer or user's natural environment where this problem you would like to solve for. So this is also important. So this allows you to have a total immersion to live the life of your customer or the user. And by doing that, you understand yourself, because you then you are you understand in a way that how customer is living their life, how they're what kind of thing they're going through, and so on and so forth. So this is important to note. Okay, so this is how the customer canvas looks like. Actually, there are various tools and available in actually, and I would recommend to follow that, because the journey of entrepreneurs start early, but it's very long. And keeping yourself highly motivated but highly organized and focused is very, very important. So So follow such kind of canvases which has been developed based on scientific methods and lots of work behind that by many people around the globe. So always, what does she thinks or he thinks and feel? What does she see? What does she say and do? And what here? And just note it down here after you come back. So this is how the customer canvas looks like, and you should also follow this thing. So this is just an example I wanted to give it to you. There are, of course, the structured way of doing this thing. The last but not least is the fourth leg, which allows you to even dig deeper to find decode the information of your information you receive from the customer and user. Like, then you have used data collected now even from single person, and now interpreting that data, interpreting through that data, and using your institution is the key here. So when you get the feedback, either through interviews or observations, read between the lines. So this is important. Sometimes what people try to say is different. And here important is that you always do that among your team members, or you can also do it alone. Try decode it and then go back to your team and say what is unsaid, what you feel, for example, what you have decoded out of it, what customer has said and unsaid, for example, what might be the deepest reason for the feedback your customer or the user gave, for example, and then where might be the social biases he or she might be giving. Reading between the lines is big style would be the data analysis is doing, basically, because sometimes what people try to say, they do not try to say the things directly, and so always link that between the point were discussing and the next point they were discussing. So that might allow you to find out what is in between the line, because not all of us are like expert data analyst. So this is also the trick. We can use it as a entrepreneur to go ahead. Okay. So this is my last slide of the interview and observation. And so this is how I would capture the feedback very quickly when you are like, 5 minutes, because writing and doing all this thing is very fast, because you cannot simply ask your interview to stop. I want to take a note or something. So always like point it out what worked, what would be improved, like one word, for example. There are open questions, like new ideas come, and then you can, for each interview, do not combine many interviews in the same paper or same notes. Always create a different the slide, for example, for every single customer. Doesn't matter how many are there. So what would be improved? Are there any open question, any new ideas you came out of this? Okay, so this was the part I wanted to talk to you about, the interviews and observations to take your ideas to next level by validating it directly from your users or the customers. Well, I'm done here with my small talk, and now I would like to open that for the questions and answers. So thank you.